History Talk with Smith Co. Hello, you're back, and or maybe you're not back. Maybe this is your first time. Okay, anyway, so today we're going to be talking about the reasons the British would oppose Home Rule and the reasons that they would, not. The reasons they'd support it. So, basically, British voters had four main reasons for not wanting to give Ireland self-government. Now, the most important one to them was the security of Britain. Because Britain is an empire that controls many, I wouldn't say small, but non-powerful areas. So it's a bit like that how Spanish, come to the Aztecs and, they kill a lot of them because, they've got guns. The Aztecs have not. If you give the Aztecs guns, if you went back in time and give the Aztecs guns, they would wipe out the Spanish. It wasn't an even fight, that's the point. So the British don't tend to have very even fights. So when they do have even fights, they tend to be actually at risk of losing them. If you see the Second World War, have a very high risk of losing them. And you've got all these other situations which Britain has a problem, which is it is able to maintain an empire because its empire is made up of weaker states than it. It has a very strong military, but it's not necessarily strong enough if there are other rival empires or rival countries that have the same military strength take over or try to, attack them. So if I went to war with one of these, big enemies, or just big countries really, if it became an enemy, the enemy might decide to send troops to Ireland. Now, if they did this would be basically a backdoor to Britain. So the Act of Union was passed in 800 because the French had attempted to invade Ireland 2 years before. Now, British people feared that something similar might happen again if Ireland had its own government. Of course, one problem with this. Britain controlled Ireland's war and peace area. So they didn't really need to fear this area because Home Rule wouldn't have actually included this actual section. Ireland couldn't have said yes if someone came in. So if someone invaded, it would be just the same whether they were, with Home Rule or not. Furthermore, many British people actually opposed Home Rule in order to protect Irish Protestants. Ireland was 75% Catholic, and the Irish Parliament would be overwhelmingly Catholic. British Protestants feared that Irish Catholics might actually persecute Irish Protestants. Now, obviously, later on, the discussion of partition will be involved, and then that would also discount that view. Next, you have the kind of idea of self-government as encouragement for other conquered peoples to demand the right to rule themselves. Now, this is a more interesting part because you have a situation which it is actually accurate, because if you look at it like this, people do not like to be invaded and pushed under by a state which, basically just, takes over the resources for itself. So, obviously, you won't like that, but you may not rise against it because you'll know you'll probably lose. But if you see another state ruled by the same people, because this is a mistake that Irish politicians would have made when they looked at the Austrians and they would look at other people. They didn't look towards Britain, they just looked towards other people who achieved self-government. But the point of the mist was this: Britain is not Austria. So Britain is a far different sort of situation. Britain is not going to respond the same way, and that's probably why, in some ways, Home Rule didn't come quickly enough. So this is the point that if you have the situation in which you go, okay, so if you see this person and they succeed in this, then others might ask, yeah, of course you could argue, why not give it to them? They're only asking for Home Rule, that's fine. But now you have the final one. And this is the racist attitude. Some British people were, I wouldn't say stupid, they were just kind of it's that kind of racism where inside you know you're talking bull, but it's kind of like an excuse for you to be outright just wrong, and it kind of works for them because there was a history of propaganda in Britain. For example, in Britain there was a poster up. No, they would use the word black and then add an S. No Irish and no dogs. That's a sign which would have appeared all over the place in Britain. And that's the sort of situation you have. There's also caricatures of people within their empire were, well, wrong and also offensive. And this kind of propaganda caused a lot of British people, not just a lot of ordinary British people, a lot of Harpers as well, to regard Irish people as inferior and doubted if they were actually capable of self-government, which, is a bit hypocritical. You invade a country, you can't keep your grubby fingers off other people's states, so, it's just, don't be talking about self-government. You're the one who took it away from people. If they can't manage it, that's your fault. Anyway, but that's the situation. Ireland was its own country for many years, and then Britain took it over. So, if you force around to take a country over rather than democracy, then you're kind of showing that that's not really an issue there. Anyway, so then you have the fact that some British people would have actually supported Home Rule. So the main reason for this were they were kind of wrong in a sense. See, the problem is that when you're in an imperialistic country, you don't always tend to get the best view of what your country actually does to people. For example, it's an interesting thing that, if you look at it like this, if you look at it, and this is what we discussed this before on the channel, I think, if you look at back in the time of Henry VIII and Elizabeth, they had to use propaganda because when they ousted Richard, the people do not necessarily respond well to someone just outing their king and saying, I'm king now. Yeah, that position which is supposed to be a divine right of God is supposed to give you that position. I'm now it. How that works? Trust me, I'm king now. That's the situation. So they have to use propaganda to do that. And that propaganda was lies. Mostly invented by Shakespeare and Thomas More. The point is that that's the sort of situation they needed to do, because British people were going, well, we don't care that Richard burnt down a bunch of houses in Ireland and killed a bunch of families. They're not English. We don't care. Have something we care about. So at this time, they didn't really know about a lot of things because they weren't really informed of them. So they believed that they had a history of prosperity and freedom. Yeah, I mean, you're free. You take over the countries and force multiple ones into slavery. So, freedom, sure. But when they then boasted about this, foreigners would then point to all of these countries, because you can't boast of your freedom, of how you show freedom and everything when you have an empire which you rule with absolute tyranny, where you go, you want freedom? No. That's not really aspirations of people, countries that are free. So it has suffered poverty, famine, and immigration, and all of this is caused by Britain. Now, Britain's response to a lot of this is just to control the civil rights, and it doesn't do this to its own people. So this kind of embarrasses some British people who really, they understand that it's kind of bull to say you've got a history of freedom when you do have an empire and you do cause multiple deaths for no reason. So this is the sort of thing you have. So this kind of makes some people feel kind of that it would be better off if they let the Irish rule themselves, because Britain is unable to rule any countries fairly. But, and, you know, and in fairness to them, you know, they are an empire. What can you expect from a country that invades another country and just steals the resources? That's never really going to work out right. So, since 1885, Home Rule MPs never actually won less than 80 of the 103 Irish seats in Westminster. This was proof of an overwhelming vote in favour of self-government. This convinced some British people that they could not stop Ireland, which was in the United Kingdom, against the clear will of the majority. Because, you know, what you're faced with there is the majority of Irish people wish to have home rule. What do you say, England? No. So you're against the democracy of the whole majority? Like, this is 80 out of 103 seats. This is a fairly big majority now. You sure? No. I'm positive. No freedom for you. That is going to head down a problem. So this makes some people believe that they should give Ireland their freedom. Now, well, actually not their freedom, in fact, you know, that's sort of the point. It's not really full freedom. You're not giving republicanism, that's the point. You're just giving self-government. And self-government which is easily interfered with by the British government. Yeah. Anyway, so since the 1870s, Irish MPs had been disrupting the business of British Parliament with their demands of home rule and various different reforms for Ireland. Now, the British people don't really care, many of them, about Ireland. They just don't care. It's like, don't care. Just do not care. It's just one country that we own. Why would I care? I care about my country. And that's kind of fine. Although, if that is the case, maybe you shouldn't be running an empire. You know, actually, no one should be running an empire. Empires are actually bad. Maybe you disagree with me there, but, you know, in my opinion, they are anyway. So, as most of them would wish that they would just go away so that they actually have time to deal with their own problems, that was one of the reasons that you could make them go away for. Just, you know, give them the little thing that they want and the thing that you can technically sort of basically just take away at a moment's notice. So now, in the next video, we'll be talking about the British parties and the Union. So hopefully you'll join us then. If not, we have other videos for you to view, or you can even view other videos till that time comes. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel. And, you know, remember, all of that helps. And of course, if you don't come back and we don't see you in other videos, ultimately this, goodbye forever, I guess. And hopefully you'll enjoy the rest of your existence.